for coming out for the cultural mosaic. My name is Teresa, the chameleon, for those of you who couldn't tell. The tell alone, makes it, but it's okay. It's okay. You guys don't know what a chameleon looks like.
You're not changing colors.
You know what? I am changing colors, actually. It's like, how dare they not know? Do you know how much time I put hand sewn, okay? Hand sewn. These are basically like 20 different pillows that I put together for a group of people not to know what I am. But I'm not the least bit bitter. Because and these are pillows as well. So yes, I sacrificed 3 t-shirts and a pair of pants and a bath towel and washcloth. All brought to you. Yeah. Okay, just to bring you cultural mosaic, and the way I asked people to interpret this as being an encounter with the other. So it was a very open, and I've got a wonderful lineup of how we all interpreted that, including my very own mother.
Yay!
Who is,
Go Velma!
I would say, I grew up listening to her stories and her mother's stories, and she was just like, I don't like telling stories in front of people. It's like, are you kidding me? That's all you've done most of my life, is tell people stories. So for me, this is a special treat.
Yeah.
And it's also a special treat to start off with the woman who came through the door just in time to take a picture. I mean, that's timing, For Black culture, that's on time. It's like, what do you mean I'm late? Nothing's happened yet. That's on time. So, our first letter is going to reveal the survival strategy of being the gazed upon woman. Please welcome Hope Ruiz.
Yay! Hope!
Under the still waters of my eyes rages a war, but you have to look closely to see it. I've spent years perfecting the facade. Smoke and mirrors, an ancient dance passed down through my chromosomes. Swirling scarves conceal my form with swashes of color and arching movement. A dangerous flirting, wrangling with the male gaze that glares intrusively from blue flickering TV screens and screams out from larger-than-life billboards I speed past on the highway. I've had to learn my place in the shadow of sketchy gentlemen's clubs on the outskirts of town, cooking in my grandmother's kitchen while the boys play football outside, scantily clad women cheering on the sidelines of the Cowboys games on Sunday afternoons, the humiliation of raised skirts on the playground or hanging exposed on the monkey bars, giving sugar on the wrinkled cheeks of East Texas friends of the family and told not to be rude if I shied away. Legs carefully crossed in church with skirts smoothed flat over my knees and an appeasing smile plastered stiff to my face until it took on the feel of a dried mold I wore whenever I went out. Only in the quiet of my own room did I pry it off and set it gently in the corner to rest. We inhale these roles in the air we breathe, learn to swim or drown. Resign ourselves to become the docile Disney princesses waiting for their prince to come, or devoted to turning their beasts and frogs into handsome husbands that seemingly hold our fate in their rough hands. In school, we were fed stories of the searing scar of the Scarlet Letter, Dante's haunting circles of hell, and Voltaire's woman with one buttock. Taming of the shrew on the stage in the summer heat, and Pretty Woman on the big screen. I swallowed it all down like the cum of my first college crush who shoved my head between his legs while we said goodbye in the dark, when what I really wanted to do was bite the damn thing off. Just like I faked being asleep when the hands of my best friend's dad strayed as he stroked my 12-year-old back while putting us to bed during the sleepover. Pretended his heavy breathing was perfectly normal as he cupped my sprouting breast in his hands. And I dutifully baked him cookies for Christmas, convinced we must have something special between us. Luckily, there were whispers of another storyline that trickled beneath the surface like a concealed spring, slowly eating away at the later layers of stone. I discovered The Handmaid's Tale on a summer reading list, The Color Purple, and I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. I started pushing back against the narrative I'd been written into. I wore baggy pants that hung loose on my curves, shaved my head, and stopped shaving my legs. I discovered I had my own secret superpower of making myself small and unappealing so I could slip invisibly through the gaze of gawking men on the street. And I celebrated the silence as I strode by undetected. But the roots of this world sunk deeper than the gaze I carefully avoided. My own storylines still lie tangled, indistinguishable, and mangled in the other I had internalized and learned to call my own. One lazy Saturday, as I lay pinned under yet another sweating, panting lover, I heard my own voice whisper conspiratorially in my head, "Just go numb. It'll be over soon." I recognized it as a mantra I must have been repeating for years. But for some reason, this time, it snagged on something jagged in my mind and tore. I felt my muscles tense, my eyes scanned the room, and calculated the distance to the door. I began to fight back. All the years of silence, of quiet acquiescing filled my small frame and wrestled my good-looking boyfriend off of me. Engaging in a violent tango to the door, I watched his face contort, confused, as he swore and belittled me. I can still hear the sharp, metallic sound of bitch and whore as he stormed down the stairs of the apartment outside, as my neighbors peeked meekly through their windows. I stood there dazed, my victory still tingling under my skin, my lungs expanded at last inside my chest, filling in the contours of my body with color, life-affirming and sweet. Larger, louder, prouder.
All right, our next rouletter makes her debut on our stage. And she also makes us fly on the wall witnesses of an exchange between a foreigner and her boss. Please welcome Kamila Forson.
February 2008. Clara's boss leaned against the edge of his desk, facing her, his arms folded. She sat in his chair with her legs crossed. "Uncross your legs," he said. She stared, taken aback. "Please," he said, almost pleading, "you'll see." He shifted his weight to stand and unfolded his palms to show her 2 coins. It was Valentine's Day, so Clara had been anticipating some presentation all day. They were the only ones at the office after 6 p.m. A tram rumbled past the building, its bell tinkling. "Normally I don't remember my dreams," he began. "But last night I dreamed that you sat before me as you do now. I brought you gifts, but nothing was good enough. I brought you flowers, laid them across your lap, but you didn't want them. I brought you jewelry, but you didn't want that either. I brought you a book, but you stood and kicked it away. Then I brought you 2 coins, and here he set each coin gently on Clara's knees, and you seemed satisfied with that." Clara jumped to her feet. The coins fell to the carpet, and his chair rolled backwards, and the surge of power she felt sitting behind the director's desk dissipated. She was in over her head. It was already dark out, had been since around 3, and the street lamps cast an orange glow over the sludgy gray snow. Clara hurried across the intersection to the tram stop, burning up in her wool peacoat, just as the 16 rushed past her, slowing down, the lights inside ablaze. The doors opened and she ran the last half block, jumping on just as the doors sounded and banged shut. She slid into an available seat in the back and cradled her leather bag in her lap, a gift from him. She glanced at her reflection in the glass, but quickly darted her eyes to the other passengers, an old woman with a grocery bag at her feet, a teenager with headphones, a young guy with a dog in a muzzle who studied her, his ears and eyes alert, as though sensing her agitation. The heaters whirred, and she unraveled her scarf and unbuttoned her coat. He'd been present at her job interview with the editor-in-chief for maybe all of 5 unenthusiastic minutes. He'd sat at the head of the conference table, clearly with a role to play. Smoothing back his carefully combed gray hair, he'd exhaled and explained very simply and slowly, as though Clara didn't understand Czech, what his expectations were of the editor role she was hired to fill. He looked straight ahead out the window or at his hands, and when he stood to leave, he seemed surprised when Clara thanked him. That was about a year ago. The first few months on the job, Clara had an outstanding weekly appointment with him to update him on her projects. If she had any intervening questions, she'd hover in the doorway to his office, the office where she'd later sit in his chair, raid the cabinet for snacks, and reach for a paper he suddenly snatched, only to brush against his body, surprisingly solid under the dress shirt. She'd hover and he'd look up, annoyed, and wait impatiently for her to speak. Her old Samsung buzzed with a text message, and she pawed through her bag for it. "I love you," he wrote, "but I think you know that." She got off at her stop, and instead of waiting for the bus to take her up the hill, she set off at a brisk pace. She gingerly turned the corner onto her street, lest she slip on the ice again. The stars were out above the sharp navy outline of the hill on the other side of the river. She unlocked the iron gate and fumbled for the keys to the house. She could hear her landlord's TV blaring in the downstairs apartment and scurried up the stone stairs to her floor. Her apartment was freezing as usual. Her landlord was a tram operator and gas was expensive. Clara read the message again that night stretched out on her bed. She still had on thermal tights under her pants, 2 sweaters, and a scarf. "I love you," she said aloud. Gripping the phone, she stared at the ceiling and felt strangely satisfied, as though she had achieved an extraordinary feat with minimal effort. May 2007. Clara ducked behind the wall that served as the backdrop to the table where a steady schedule of authors were presenting at their company's booth. There were several metal shelves piled high with books and a tangle of electronic devices, as well as a stash of bottled water and snacks. It was a welcome break from the book fair crowds. Her boss was leaning against one of the shelves with an open box of cookies. He was always hungry, Clara would come to find out. She was unsure if he had an actual medical condition, but he had to eat several times a day, and when he did, it was always a sizable amount. He wasn't a fast eater either, so it required a fair amount of patience to sit with him when hunger struck, especially if you weren't hungry yourself. "Good day," she greeted him formally. He closed the box and set it aside, clearing his throat. Shoving his hands in his pockets, he looked at her, then at the book in her hands. It was an English translation of a Czech classic, Saturnin, which famously describes 3 types of people in the world when confronted with a plate of donuts in a cafe. Those who merely register that the donuts are there, those who imagine throwing them, and then those who actually do. Clara's ex-boyfriend, Michal, a fervent anti-communist who listened to bootleg Blondie as a teen in the early 80s, considered himself a member of the third group. "I can't imagine myself actually throwing the donuts," she said, "but I like the idea." "You remind me of Isabel Archer," he said carefully, studying her. "Why, because I'm a foreigner abroad? I can only hope I have a happier ending than what Henry James dreamed up for her." He seemed like he was about to say something more, then stopped and instead suggested, "Let's walk around." They dove into the stream of people trickling down the aisles. "Maugham," he asked. "I love the painted veil." "The custom of the country?" "I'm a huge fan of Edith Wharton." "Tolstoy?" "I took an entire semester on him." "Dickens?" "He was my favorite when I was 14. "Stendhal?" "You got me there." "Hey, Dad." They ran into one of his sons, who was around Clara's age, and stopped in the middle of the aisle. Someone jostled Clara's shoulder, and she glanced off to the side. A booth with art posters caught her eye. "I'll see you later," she said, and kept moving. She was looking at a sepia-tone image of a famous Czech writer and his German shepherd, both sitting together on a park bench, when her boss appeared at her elbow. They returned to the cozy nook behind the wall. "Thanks for the poster," she said. It was to be the first of many gifts. It's a shame they didn't have anything of Rilke. He's my favorite. He lowered a bottle of water from his lips to look at her. You're killing me, he said. Rilke is my favorite too. Your solitude will be your home and haven, even in the midst of very strange conditions, and from there you will discover all your past. And with that, he invited Clara to call him by his first name, Indra. A couple of days later, Indra unfolded a map of Prague on the conference table. He adjusted his glasses and stepped back. Clara stood next to him. I might not be from here, she said wryly, but if you're going to tell me to avoid the park by the main train station at night, I already know that. That's fine, but do you walk around Václavské náměstí after dark? Or else am I going to get a fried cheese sandwich at 2 a.m.? He exhaled dramatically and pulled out a chair. And where did you say you grew up? Houston. Don't worry, it's a much more dangerous place than Prague, and I've made it this far. Clara folded her arms. His paternal concern for the well-being of the only foreign employee in his office was genuine, if not a bit misplaced. Well, since we won't be needing this, he tore off a corner of the map, then slid a pen out of his shirt pocket and clicked the top against the surface of the table. He scrawled something on the scrap of paper and handed it to her. But if you ever need anything, he said, almost shyly. He stood abruptly and began folding up the map. Clara glanced down at the piece of paper. He jotted down his phone number in his jagged script. Thank you, she said slowly, clearly, hoping that sincerity would dispel any ambiguity. He opened the door and gestured with the map that she go first. The receptionist looked up as they filed into the hall. Thank you for your time, he told Clara. The receptionist glanced away, and Clara wandered back to her office as he closed the door to his. Hi, she texted him when she got to her desk. Here's my number.
Is going to talk about the culture of dogs. Please welcome Daniel Davila.
It's actually cultural mosaics according to dogs. Your topic. No, you came up with it, didn't you?
No.
Sounds like you. Oops. Oh, where'd it go? Oh, there it is. There it is. Well, I didn't know what I was going to write about this, but I hadn't seen you all in a long time, so I was getting a lot of peer pressure, so here I am.
Good. What? About time.
So I was at my sister's house and I was looking at Lulu. Lulu's a little Chihuahua terrier yapper mix.
Yeah.
I say, Lulu, topics cultural mosaics. Would you mind writing this for me? She said, you know, I really don't care. She's looking at me. It's just as long as I'm fed and I'm loved, I really don't care. I said, does that mean you're not going to write it? She said, I already gave you the line. Go with it. So this is what Lulu told me to write. Well, we've got our little dogs, fat dogs, skinny dogs, muscular dogs, fast dogs, lazy dogs, brown dogs, black dogs, yellow dogs, spotted dogs, lap dogs, yard dogs, hairy dogs, smart dogs, dumb dogs, silly dogs. They all work for food. All food. Makes no difference if the food is Chinese, Mexican, Italian, German, Thai, Indian, Ethiopian, Mediterranean, or Russian. Food is food to a dog. Every language is a good language to a dog as long as it says, want a treat? It could be in Spanish, Mandarin, Arabic, Bengali, Romanian, Malay, French, and Czech, Hindi, Serbian, Korean, Yiddish, Maltese, Slovak, or Slovenian, Galatian, Lao, or Latin, Macedonian, Portuguese, Danish, Polish, or Persian, Nepali, Esperanto, Swahili, Urdu, or Zulu. The dog listens. Dog don't care if you're white, Muslim, Buddhist, redneck, upper class, middle class, homeless, sociopath, left-handed, chubby, male, female, simple or complicated, blood type O, love to masturbate, solely celibate, nudist, preacher, protester, single, divorce, Muslim, Christian, or atheist too, pierced, white-collared or robe, tattooed, circumcised, gay or straight, natural blonde or wannabe brunette, fro, braids, or dreads, it's all the same, black, brown, or yellow, introvert, extrovert, pervert, shaved or bush, big penis or walnut, glasses or contact, sophisticated or simple, lonely or lowly, or plainly insane. Dog just wants to be loved, no matter what culture, it's all the same.
All right, our next rouletter is going to talk about the changing culture of driving during her lifetime. Please welcome my mother, Velma.
You know, I don't like to talk in front of the audience.
Yeah,
Mom, I was so fascinated at driving at age 8 until one day my sister-in-law and I were home alone, and my brother had gone to the military, and in my hometown, nobody took their keys out of their car, but you don't do that now. So the keys stayed in the car, and so she said, why don't we go out here and try and learn to drive? Okay. So we got outside and we didn't know stick shift now. So we didn't know which gear to put it in and how to do it, except we knew you pressed the clutch. And so we finally mastered all that and learned to drive. So then later, my daddy got this tractor, lived on a farm. And so I had 4 brothers, and all my brothers knew how to drive, and my younger brother was driving the tractor, and all these people out there, and they, you know, fascinated with the tractors. And I wanted to get out there too, because I was, you know, sort of wanting to do what they were doing to them tomboys. So my dad said, okay, you can go out there. So I was the only girl out there on the tractor. I was really fascinated. So back where did I go? To Okinawa. Okay. There, I didn't have to take a test to drive. Well, back when I got my license, I forgot about that. When I got my license in Virginia, I got them at age 14, and someone had to sign for me. My mom said, no, I'm not going to sign. But that's okay, I'll take you, I'll sign. So that was the happiest day of my life. So then we went to Okinawa, and I didn't have to take a driver's test, you know, except an open book test. So I didn't have to study for anything, so gave me my license. Then I get back to North Carolina, haven't had study a book since I was 14. I got to North Carolina, so I said, well, I'll just give them my North Carolina license, my Virginia license, and they'll give me the North Carolina license. Didn't work that way. My daughter and I were together, my oldest daughter, and so the guy gave me this clipboard with the paper on it. And so we just talking away and walked on over to the seat. So the guy came over and said, Miss, you can't sit over here. And I said, why can't she? He said, because you're taking a test. I am. So I proceeded to take the test and passed it in. They checked it and said, you missed 2. I said, what 2? He said, showed it to me. I say, sir, don't anybody honk a horn when they get ready to pass a car. And he said, ma'am, that's okay. Just go take your picture. So back in Okinawa, I went back for the second time, and I still had my license from the first time. So I'm driving. I lived in the southern part of the island. I'm driving up to the northern part. So this Okinawa, and I'm driving, speed limit 30 miles an hour. This Okinawa just cut right in front of me, and I had to put on my brakes to keep from hitting me. Oh, I'm so upset. So I decided I'm going to do the same thing to him. So I did. The MP saw me. They stopped me. I said, no, I'm not going too fast. Why is he stopping me? He said, ma'am, let me see your driver's license and your ID card. I showed it to him. He said, ma'am, you cut in front of that guy. I said, well, did you see what he did to me? He said, but, we Americans, we've been driving longer. Say, so we have to excuse them. He said, I'm not going to give you a ticket. He said, but next time don't get so angry and don't cut in front of anybody like that. So later on, of course, I got pregnant, and my husband and I, at 5 o'clock in the morning, he's taking me to the northern part of the island, to the hospital, and I say, honey, there's an EMP, and you can't go too fast. I said, you may as well stop and let them know what's going on. So the EMP said, okay, follow me. I mean, we're going to island fast. I say, okay, honey, you know what? We only picked out a boy's name. I say, so I think we need a girl's name too. So I said, this is the third one. He said, you have put the jinx on that baby. I say, no. It's whatever it's going to be. But we need this girl's name. So we picked out the girl's name, and about 30 minutes after we got to the hospital, there she is.
Now you guys all know, my mother put the jinx on me. It didn't work. All right. I called this piece Dipped My Big Toe. 2015 was the year I unintentionally dipped my big toe into poverty. I didn't attempt to be a poor, starving artist, but necessity is the mother of invention, and I reinvented myself several times, juggling jobs in this great circus act called the gig economy. Editor, writer, tutor, adult basic education instructor, call center agent, insurance agent, spoken word and storytell producer, painter. Everything I needed to exist in a financial niche. I actually thought I'd make it as a freelance editor and writer, especially since I had money saved up in between contract times. What I discovered, like being an entrepreneur, it's harder than first blush. Just before running out of money, I landed a part-time job teaching adult basic ed in the evenings. I absolutely love being back in the classroom with the added benefits of motivated adult students. My mornings free, very little lesson planning, virtually no grading, and a less than 10-minute commute. I still had the fantasy of a freelance writing, editing job, or going full-time with the teaching gig. As the months rolled by, neither happened. One way I responded to the financial reality of my underemployed situation was by reducing my grocery budget from $50 a week to $30 a week. The beauty of being a math teacher was that I understood chunking. For a grocery budget of $30, I'd buy 15 $2 items. If I knew I had to buy an item that cost more than $2, then I'd have to buy fewer than 15 items. I always celebrated the weeks when my grocery bill was under 25. Then, as far as math was concerned, I could buy up to $35 worth of groceries for the following week, although I'd still only write 15 items down on my list. I had a list of weekly grocery lists on my phone. I never put more than 3 non-edible things on one list. So, if I were running low on shampoo, conditioner, toothpaste, and toilet paper, I'd have to make a decision about which 3 out of 4 things I was going to buy. I became much better at portion control, since using a little of everything was better than having none of anything. I applied that logic with edible things as well. Gone were the days of 2-egg omelets when 1 egg would do. As a matter of fact, my cheap sources of protein became eggs and peanut butter. Not together, mind you. I embellished ramen noodles, a cheap carbohydrate, with a scrambled egg, fresh produce sauteed in toasted sesame seed oil, a toss of frozen peas, and a drizzle of sriracha. That is like gourmet, and nobody ever wants to eat it. Of course, I'd only use half of that ramen noodle flavor packet because of how much sodium it contained. In reality, all cheap foods are bad for you. What makes them so inexpensive is the low nutritional content. I've never read that correlation on any nutrition label. I just know it to be true. This country despises poor people and wants us to shorten our lifespans through diet, among other things. I'd buy most spices and grains in the bulk aisle. I'd clip coupons and base my weekly meals on which grocery specials were available. I'd already had the habit of cooking one big meal a week and packing it up in Tupperware to take to work for lunch. Yet the ante was upped, since all my meals had to be rationed out. I marveled how preoccupied with food I became. Even when I wasn't actually hungry, I still thought about food. I knew my rent would be paid. I still maintained my yoga membership since I could go in the mornings, but I stopped training capoeira. Part of the reason was the conflict of scheduling, since most of the classes were in the evenings when I worked, and I was aging out. But financially, it was another monetary sacrifice, especially since I could still practice some moves on my own in the fitness center in my apartment complex. Trips to get a mani-pedi fell by the wayside, along with getting my car washed, dance classes, and thank goodness, I've never really liked shopping. Even shopping for costumes to host my show became a creative opportunity to see how economically I could make them. And nobody guessed what I dressed up as. I'm not bitter though, I'm glad to be a chameleon. This pursuit was aided by some of my female students, since we traded clothes among ourselves. I always maximized the costuming angle with every piece of clothing someone gave me, along with sacrificing clothes and material I'd had for years but hardly ever wore. Anytime I started to throw a private pity party, I reminded myself that other people, especially other women, have come back from much more extreme circumstances. I was merely a middle-class, college-educated woman who was temporarily underemployed. I had students who couldn't control the number of children they birthed, students who were employed but lived out of their car because they had to make the decision between paying rent and maintaining a car. You see, a car will take you to a job, but an apartment will not. I had a student who'd be chronically hungry and had to leave class a little early in order to find a safe place to park her car so she could sleep in peace, and still she struggled with passing the English reading and writing test. I always gave her the optimistic advice that with more reading practice, she'd eventually be successful. Yet I suspected that chronic stress suppressed her academic achievement. So I know I'm not sank as financially low as I could possibly go. There is no bottom limit. I've dipped my big toe into poverty. I'll spend the rest of my life avoiding a bigger plunge. This experience has helped confirm two ideas I've always thought. First, money does buy happiness when you have the right set of priorities. And secondly, poverty sucks. Before, but it's just like my mantra. Poverty sucks.
Or as Bernie would say, it's expensive to be poor.
Right. Okay, so I don't know whose pen. I assume it was your pen because you just came with like 50 pens. Okay. All right. Our next roulette serves up a fresh slice of Brooklyn. Please welcome Brian Grosz.
Big shout out to you, my man. Can everybody give her a round of applause? She claims that she doesn't like to get up to speak, and I don't believe one fucking word of it.
Bashful child.
Oh, yeah. Oh. Today is always a tough day for me as a New Yorker. And I promised Miss T that I wouldn't speak about it, so I'm just going to talk about my whole Brooklyn neighborhood. The rent was decent, and I'd be taking over the room of a former bandmate, plus a friend from college also had a room there, so it seemed like a good lease to sign. And I dropped my bags in Fort Greene, Brooklyn. Hell, Diggable Planets were from Fort Greene. Who doesn't want to be cool like that? Biggie Smalls was raised 2 blocks away from me. I might be a punk and metal dude, but hip-hop is in my heart, and you'd give it solid money that I tagged that whole neighborhood the first week I was there. And after wandering the streets and frequenting the bodegas, in my jeans, boots, and leather, I learned that I had been given a nickname. Rock and Roll Brian. Why? Apparently, White Boy Brian was already taken. That's how diverse my neighborhood of 12 years once was. My girlfriends often got called Snowflake. People often tried to speak Arabic to me. And I was glad that I was already versed in the differences between bro, bruh, and cuz. White, but I could hang. And over the time, the color of my skin meant nothing, even though I kept coloring it. Everyone in the hood immediately knew if you could size up if you were cool. Are you cool was the unspoken question when you'd meet somebody new. As I've joked before, in Brooklyn, the whites hate the blacks hate the Jews hates retail prices. But are you cool? One afternoon, I'm in a bar and in walks a local drug dealer, Dre. Monstrously proportioned. And I say this as a guy who's 6'2". But he had the giant heart of a teddy bear. And his hair, which was usually pulled back in tight cornrows, was on some serious Frederick Douglass meets Don King shit. And as he sat down next to me, I said, Dre, what the fuck is up with your head? And in his characteristic voice, which sounded like Mom's Mabley had sex with Howlin' Wolf and then gave birth to a rusted tuna can. Yo, Rock, I was gonna get my hair did, but I just got my check. Let me buy you a shot. I said, your welfare check with an arched eyebrow? Word, it's the 14th. What you drinking? Actually, I already paid for this drink with my tax dollars. And he paused for a moment and muttered, oh, shit, Rock, why you gotta fuck up me trying to do something nice? But you right. A few months later, he got locked up in Rikers Island prison because he was in the backseat of a car that just happened to have a dead body in the trunk. Dre wouldn't snitch, but he would call the bodega once a week where Palestinian Ralph would wave my ass inside and pass me the phone, and I'd hear, yo, Rock, I can't talk long, so I'm gonna make this real quick. Just wanna tell you, click, You blew it, Dre. Did I mention that I was living next door to a crack house? Don't get me wrong, it was a beautiful building from the early 1900s. But there was a guy who would sit on the stoop all day long as his giant pit bull laid at his feet with its giant dog testicles splayed out in the sun. And when I first moved in, I knew that neither he nor the dog were to be fucked with. And if anything, I needed to become a casual acquaintance. One morning, I'm ducking out for coffee, and he shouted at me, yo, you Rock? Yeah, what's up, bro? My cousin Dre called me from Rikers and told me to keep an eye out for you, and that you're good people. Just trying to keep the hood strong, brother. You know, regardless of whatever, good people's good people. Let me give you my card, brother. And then he reached into his wallet, and I made an effort to show that I was not looking at how much cash he was carrying. and he produced a torn piece of lined notebook paper that had his first name only and his phone number on it in ballpoint pen. Yo, you need anything? Anything. You let me know. I still can't tell if I was smiling over his ghetto business card or it was the fact that people didn't care that I was the Fort Greene form of Gaijin, a honky in a yet-to-be gentrified neighborhood. But we had a laugh and engaged in a fairly complicated handshake that I didn't know, but handshakes in the hood are part communication, part representation, and part ballroom dance. Hell, I used to have Passover Seder at the atheist Iranians woman's apartment across the street. She later married a nice Jewish boy. And they have a son named Nacho. How's that for diversity? Sure, I judge people. That skinny douche who walks into the bar behind my apartment without a shirt, unironically sporting a Make America Great Again hat, that guy can go fuck himself 6 ways from Sunday. But I am not afraid of the unknown. I embrace experience no matter how physically or emotionally problematic it may be. Since 9/11, today, we have lived in a culture of fear. And we cannot exist in a constant state of paranoia, for it achieves nothing but anger. At the very least, know the other. At the very best, you will learn something from a new friend. Don't be afraid of the outside. It's where the fresh air lies.
All right, and our last featured artist is just a walking, talking, yellow fashion poet icon, known as Thom, the world poet.
Daniel.
Accompanied by Daniel and his clarinet.
And anyone else?
And anyone else who self-identifies.
Jax, I missed the demonstration. He's in the demonstration still. Me, I'm here.
He's always demonstrating.
Thank you very much, my friend. I was going to do something entirely different, so now it's be something entirely responsive to the fact that we're in the house of September 11th. But to respond to you, my friend in Scotland was pulled over for speeding, and she said to the policeman, "All those other cars are passing me. Why didn't you get them?" And the policeman said in a dry Scottish tone, "Have you ever been fishing? Have you ever caught all the fish?" When I was at university, starving, thin, which determined me to be fat and water, I lived on 21 cents a day, a piece of fish, a pint of milk. Taught me then that thin may be in, but being fat is where it's at. When September 11th happened, I was in South Austin, and my friend, who now lives in Buenos Aires, and multilingual, multicultural, said, "Come over quickly." So I came over slowly, and she said, "Look," and I thought it was a movie. Strange movie. Explosions, towers, flames, American movie with special effects. And I said, "I know what to do. I'm going to tune into Australian TV and see what happens 16 hours from now, because the time zones." They didn't know either. The fact of the matter is, the story we are told, this is a room full of storytellers. It's an efficient story. And when I read your posting this morning about not doing September 11th, I was determined to do September 11th. Because not only are we, as storytellers, told that our story is not adequate, but in actual fact the story is evolving. Building 7 was a demolition job, it was pancake demolition. No plane hit that building. The insurance was taken out a few days beforehand on Building 7. The Pentagon was not hit by a plane, it was hit by a missile. All these clips come out now, but the film was confiscated from all the surveillance cameras by the FBI. And we all mourn because none of us wants any of us to die, ever. These are the only arms we have. And they're raised and surrender. If you're black, you get free bullets. If you're Spanish, you get no work. Which is why they're marching right now, why Magic Jack is at outside the Congress, whatever it's called, Capitol. Because 50 years ago, Cesar Chavez led the workers out of the fields all the way up to the Capitol, and the governor of Texas said, I'm not going to listen to you. There is no point protesting. I'm not here to listen to your story. You're here to listen to mine. Now you are here to compare stories. And the stories we are told are all inadequate. I was told the Vietnam War only was closed when they had color television, so people could see the blood. I was told about the torture at Abu Ghraib, that when they discovered the films being made of the torture of the prisoners, they did the immediate thing of banning all digital cameras. And when they said you cannot film the bodies coming back from Iraq, that's the time when I want to join the people on the streets with cameras who are filming the APD last Wednesday at Roberson Food Court. The last person to speak on the totally open stage, he put a mask on. He said, I want to show you how to film the APD. Do not film that way. Film that way, you get the whole scope. They do not like it, but you're paying their taxes. Make sure you know that you're filming them so they do not commit malfeasance upon your body or your friends. Now, his dog was shot by the APD, so he had a vested interest in making sure that the police are not criminals. But he also said this, and I say this to you. What is your boiling point? When will you activate, when the sufficient data comes in to make you change your personal story, when the narrative that you're sold and told is different to your inner story? When you notice there's cognitive dissonance and cognitive dissonance. All of us have different boiling points. Some of us get angry, some of us get afraid. But storytellers, this is your world. And to show you the power of storytelling, here's a little story that happened to me last week. I go each Friday to a thing called the Green Man, where people sit around a table and change stories to each other. They mutate. Every time you hear them, they're different. This person was 64, so he wanted to celebrate, so he invited me to Central Market, North Central Market, outside, when the rain's going to come. We'll go out in the rain, and we'll share stories with each other, because it's my birthday, Thom. Birthdays are a story. When you're born, it's a story. Your story. Beautiful story. And it's yours. So I'm on my way to join my hippie friends. I get called over. Hey, over here, Thom. And it's Rajiv, otherwise known as Roger. Now, people, when they come to this strange country, the United States, often change their name. Like, I work for a Greek called George Stephanopoulos. They changed their name to George Stephanos because he wanted to fit in. To Smith or Jones, whatever. But I digress. Rajiv was there, and there were two other men with him. There was a six-language person from Algeria who was in my favorite film called Battle of Algiers. He played the role of a French policeman in Battle of Algiers. A small role, but he was in that, and he was from Algeria. He spoke 6 languages. There was a professor from Egypt who recited poetry of Khalil Gibran, and I loved the poetry of Khalil Gibran because it meant that I had a home. My landlady was Lebanese, and she said to me, I know you've got homeless staying in my home. My brothers want to evict you, but as long as you do poetry, you'll have a home for the rest of my life. So Rajiv handed me over to his brother George. George of Accent Motors on East Bend White now looks after my second-hand car outside. But the Lebanese story goes like this. Lebanon, as you know, is a site for the next war. Israel is ready to blast Hezbollah. and Hamas. And so I asked them, well, what do you think? You are storytellers, you are professors, you come there, you have many languages and many cultures, you have a history of the Silk Road, you know about Aleppo, you know the genocide that's happening right now. They said they won't dare do it. They won't dare do it. Because it'll radiate the whole of the Middle East. They may have 300 nuclear weapons, but they don't dare do the war because they will die too. I said some people think it's glorious. Some people think there are virgins in paradise, but there are none around here. And the bottom line is, they said, well, we are storytellers. Tell us your stories and we'll show you ours. So in the rain, they're doing this. So my other friends call out, hey, come over. So I leave them with all the piles of poetry I've been trying to give away today. Thinking that, I have found intelligent people on this planet. People who value discourse, inquiry, and communication. People who are multivalent in terms of their cultures and languages and contexts. People who look at this world as it is, not as the projected history and philosophy and religions have told us how it is. So I go to my other friends, the birthday party, and give them poetry. And then it starts to rain. So I think, okay, I'll go back and continue the conversation. But the table is empty. And the rain is falling down on all the poetry I've given to them.
All right, guys. This is the magical time known as our 10-minute break.